Welcome back to another episode, everybody. My name's Emery Wolf, and joining me is
Nick Lamb.
You're a little slow on that one, but we are just two camera guys. And this is a show where we're going to talk about all things camera. What were you looking at when I was?
Well, I kept wondering, okay, is Emery recording and doing screencast at the same time? And then I was wondering how that's going to work. Well, let's go with it.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. I'm sure we've had worse things happen on this show.
This wouldn't even be in the top 10.
Yeah, like what I just did now.
Remember when we couldn't get the audio for a guest working? Took like 30 minutes.
It took more than 30.
Wow.
I do remember that day. I feel like it was kind of like this day, like when I send you this text and be like, oh yeah, do you have OBS figured out?
Yeah. But no, that time I thought I did. And I did not have it figured out. I had it figured out for two people's. No, my audio was working, and I'd assumed the other one was going to work, but there was some weird delay, and I couldn't hear. Oh, it was a mess.
I had a good laugh at my text. What was this, like maybe an hour ago? Plus, you got OBS going. Yes, totally got it going. I thought that was pretty good. You know what, Nick? Let's jump into this. Sorry, I kind of cut you off there, but let's get going. We got some things up here. Right now I'm showing, I think this is sort of the big thing of the big news topic or camera thing going on. The Canon C400 was released. So this is a all-encompassing video camera, video-centric thing. It's something that you would use. Would it actually replace your C200? That's where I want to eventually get. But your first thoughts on it, Nick?
I like it. It's good. I can finally get an RF version, upgrade to 6K. I've read about 4 different times what this triple stacked sensor means. I still don't know what it means. It sounds like they've got 3 processors for it so that it can do more things better. Am I interpreting that right? I still don't know what this triple stacked sensor means.
You know what? You keep talking. I'm going to Google triple stack sensor.
Okay. So I'm going to tell you why I would consider upgrading to the C400. I'm not saying I am yet, but I looked it up and I actually bought my C200 in 2017. So 7 years in the camera world is a long time. Now, the image still holds up quite well, but what I want to see before I make the upgrade is a head-to-head comparison where I could take a look at footage that's being shot with lenses that I would use and compare it to footage that I shoot with lenses that I use. The other reason why I would go for it is really, I hate to admit this, but to get into the RF world. I'm not there yet. I know that you kind of rave about it, but maybe I'll get there. The other reason why I would be hesitant to get there, I didn't tell you this, Emery, but so I had a card issue on my camera, and I was kind of researching prices to get new CFast cards, right? And I was looking it up. I want to wave at your camera. You're totally out of focus. So I was just looking up getting new cards, getting whether I needed to get a new SSD card because this one was kind of acting up on me, researching the different options, all that kind of stuff. And while I was doing that, I came across somebody selling their camera that included 3 cards. I think you know where this is going. And it was out of Toronto. And I just made an offer, and I basically offered them $2,000 for their camera and the 3 cards. And they took it, and then they sent me out the camera. So I'm not saying I'm kind of like pot committed to the C200, But right now, I'm loving the idea for sit-down interviews. Now I got a second angle without having to punch in. Now I've got these 3 extra cards, which I've tested them all. They're very reliable. What else does it have that was interesting? There was something else that the camera came with that was really cool.
I'm going to go back to that stack sensor. You can maybe look some up there, but the cell, I explained it to you before, and I don't think this is technically correct, but the way to think of it, and like when I use it on stills, there's still cameras that have it as well, is you've got a single sensor, but it's reading like a front layer and a back layer. And the point of it, I believe, is to speed things up, but I also think that it reads, and I think this is where we were talking about that native ISO, and there was 3 different kinds. So still cameras have a 3-layer or 2-layer. This one sounds like it's 3 layers of it. And I'm guessing each one has a different base ISO, and I'm assuming that is used to clean up noise so that when it combines both those layers, so say its base layer is 200 on the back one, 400 on the front one, or whatever, it's going to blend that together and get rid of the noise.
Oh, so having the 3 base ISOs means that you could shoot. So it says 800, 3200, and 12,800. So correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's just giving you way more essentially latitude so that you don't have to light it. Because that is the kind of drawback of my camera right now, and is speed. Essentially. And speed, yeah. But this would allow you to shoot at 3200, because we were talking about it the other day. We're all kind of set up around 320 ISO, which gives me room to go bump it down in post and to push it up without it getting too noisy. But the nice thing about this, shooting right at 800, would mean you've got a lot of room to push it down if you overexposed, which to me, that's almost as good as the low light feature, because being able to push it overexposing, I don't know about you, but that's just the worst.
Well, yeah, it's because you get rid of all your detail. Once it's blown out, you never get it back.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what you do.
But when it records it in RAW and you're at a base ISO of 800, you overexpose it a stop or whatever, you can still bring it back.
Yes and no. If you overexpose something fully, it will still be gone even on those cameras. But what ends up happening is that it's, you maybe have like a third of it still actually there, and it's not quite 100% pure white. It's like 99%. So then you can bring that back.
But so this is what's wild though about the RAW. When you bring it into DaVinci, you can adjust your ISO in post.
Yeah.
So you can literally change it after and bring back some stuff. It's actually recording that information even though it appears gone at the moment.
So it's making up for your mistakes.
Yes.
And I don't think, well, I shouldn't say this either, but there's no still camera. Like when you shoot in RAW on still cameras, I've seen some of them where they do have like an ISO adjustment, but it doesn't actually work like you are adjusting that ISO. It is more like, I'm going to call it a volume control.
Yeah.
I haven't seen it to that degree in stills anyways. But with that said, there are some of the still cameras that are cinema cameras, and they shoot C-Log. So I'm assuming maybe they do actually function that way, at least for video, maybe not for stills. But.
And maybe, yeah, that's how I've been interpreting that feature in Resolve, and why I wouldn't shoot right at 100 ISO, because if I'm shooting at 100, I don't have anywhere to go down. But if I can get off of 100, then I've got somewhere to go in case I do overexpose a hair.
Yeah. So what I'm looking at here, Nick, is I'm looking at the specs on the C400, and I'm going back and I went back and forth once with the C200 here. And from what I'm looking at, from my perspective, there's really no reason for me to upgrade to this unless, like you said, you're wanting to get into the RF system. And again, I'm more than positive that the sensor, everything about that is better. It would look better. But again, I'm feeling like it still has all the same bells and whistles. It still has all the same sort of things. So why would I upgrade if what I'm doing is making me money now or is good enough and no one's complaining that I need a better camera?
Well, and so this is me, the counter argument that's going to agree with you is YouTube's compressing everything right now. Even Netflix is compressing everything. Maybe you could get a fuller frame if you've got some uncompressed thing on Vimeo, maybe, but then you don't have the bandwidth to even watch it. So yeah, at a certain point, you're kind of right. Good enough is good enough.
And I would assume this isn't a camera that you could shoot Netflix with. Like Netflix does have a required set of cameras, and I'm assuming this will not make the list.
That will be interesting because the C200 was not on the list.
Yeah.
Or was it? I can't even remember.
I don't think it was.
But this one could be. It seems like it's got some good enough features to be on it. I guess we'll see when they come up with their new list.
Yeah. Personally, from my perspective, I wasn't like super jazzed about it. When I seen it come out, I was like, oh, awesome. They're finally doing this. Is this the thing for Nick? And I looked at it and I was like, kind of just seems like his camera anyways.
The 6K version of it, really. Yeah, this does... Now that I'm really thinking about it, this does feel like a very Blackmagic type of move, where it's the 6K version for 5 times the price of the current camera now. Yeah. Well, really, it's double, but once you bring into account the used market.
So are you going to sell your 2 C200s to get one of these?
Not right now. No. So that's an interesting thought experiment. Let's pretend that if I could trade both of them in, which I can't, to buy one of these, would I? And I think the answer is no. Which sounds a little nuts, because that would be valuing my camera at $5,500.
I think it also makes a difference too with like what you're doing now, where you are in life in general as well. Like if you were just starting out and you needed a camera for a business and you're going to be a hardcore corporate shooter, would this be your camera?
Well, if you were just starting, so money's no object?
I guess.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah, if you're starting out, money's no object. Yeah.
But would I do it? Yeah, you would be tempted. It's so tricky because when I bought my C200, Canon didn't have anything else similar that shot raw light on the market, which is why I bought it new. Mm-hmm. And I looked it up in my bill. It came to $11,000 tax in. So virtually the same price as this camera.
Yeah.
6 years ago when I got mine. But you're right. When you think of it that way, what have they really done in 6 years? 6.5 years? Not much. Now, that sensor will be more forgiving. And it is full frame, which we didn't mention.
I feel
full
like
frame
that's
versus
assumed, though. Yours isn't full frame.
Well, Super 35.
There you go.
Now, I thought that was going to be a big deal. So I was going from the 5D Mark 3, I think, or Mark 2 or Mark 3 at the time. And that was a big thing that I was thinking about not going with the C200 because I was concerned about Super 35 versus full frame. But I've not once been in a situation where I'm like, oh, I need to get 6 mils wider to show off this whole room. it just hasn't happened. And the low light situation is a thing, but I'm not shooting a lot of what would they be, kind of lower light highlight kind of videos with it, where it would be an event that's happening indoors and I'm just getting a bunch of shots. And if I do shoot that, I'll bring my DSLR, which is full frame along. They can shoot low light pretty nice. So
I'm gonna move us on here a little bit, but lenses, they also pumped out 2 lenses with this, 2 servos, so 17 to 120s. Absurdly expensive. They're basically like ENG sort of things. If you're in the market to buy a $24,000 lens or 25, I don't even know what it would be Canadian, but sure, then it's probably the lens you want. For the most part, I think, guys like us, or like I could see Ratzlaff and them getting into something like this and using the RF lenses. So with that said too, they also released the RF 35 millimeter f1.4, also a I'm gonna call it a cinema lens, I guess, because basically what they did is they took out your click stops, so that click 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 on when you're doing your f-stop, so it's all just one smooth roll. I don't know why they don't do this in every single lens. And then they also put a gears on it so that you can attach like your own focus pulling system to it. Again, why not just do this on every single lens? I don't know why. Just make them like this.
That sounds so cool. I didn't know about that. Yeah. And you're right. Why? Because when you're using a cinema lens, they've just got lines where it doesn't go click, click, click. But I've been using the click, click, click lenses for so long now, I kind of forgot that those other lenses existed.
Yeah. So then your
iris you're right. Why?
Just moves and opens just nice and smoothly.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Why?
Then they're making essentially the exact same, before I should say, they've been making the exact same lenses, except one that clicked and one that didn't. Like, it's just absurd. But anyways, here it is.
You're right.
I think it's gonna be like a pretty popular lens. Everybody likes the 35 mil range as well. How do you feel about 35 mil, Nick?
So this is another interesting thing. So since I've got this other camera, I shot my first sit down with the 2-angle lens, which we'll talk about this another show, that particular shoot and stuff, because will take too long. But it got me thinking. So I did 2 different setups, and I did one where I used my 100 mil macro, which is a nice lens. It's 2.8 as my main shot, backed it off a bit. And then I set my 85 up for my side, more side type profile, fairly stereotypical 2-camera setup. And then I tried another look where I used my 85 as my main shot. And I did my 35 mil, my 16 to 35 mil zoom at 2.8 as the side one. Now, I'd like to try that 35 mil prime as my main one, and then be able to use my 85 as my side, so I didn't get to try my third option, but I'm intrigued right now of a 35 mil.
I actually think if I was in your shoes shooting interviews, I would always go 85 and 35 together pretty much.
Yeah.
Wide and tight, right?
So the wide and tight's always been my thing too. When you look at the more recent kind of videos that people are doing, have you noticed this trend? It seems to be an actual trend where they'll get a shot similar to what I am right now, maybe a little, more of like something like this, but they'll do it on like a 50 or 85, something. They'll blur the background, and then they'll take a side angle, more profile, of the same framing. Have you seen that?
I don't know. I think I've probably done it.
maybe slightly tighter.
Not sure,
but it seems to be very popular right now. And I have to admit, so I did that.
To be clear too, we're talking like it's like a 90-degree angle shift, right?
Similar.
So
well,
like
so
straight on, and then one almost perfectly straight profile, right? Or just you counter it.
You could still get the second eye.
Yeah.
So I'm okay with, if you're going profile, to go more profile. If it's close to getting the second eye, I want to see the second eye on the side one. But I have to admit, when I did that 100 mil as my main shot and the 85 as the side, and not a different angle, but not that dissimilar height, I didn't hate the shot. It felt very modern.
How'd the cut work?
So far it's pretty good. I'm liking it.
At the end of the day, that's what I feel like all that matters, right? Is if the cut works, the cut works. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, you're right. The other thing that's super popular right now is the wider, is more of the YouTube shot where you can see the hands and it's wider. So that 35 is your main shot.
I was going to like zoom it out and do it.
Yeah. But you know what I mean? It's the Peter McKinnon shot, right? And then you could use your 85 as your side angle to get your side shot. So I'm intrigued, and I've actually been looking on Facebook Marketplace right now for a 35 mil.
Nice. Going back to this lens too, the other thing, it's got some motor in it. Everybody's jazzed about. I don't really care about the motor.
What's the motor do?
It's a VCM. It's like voice control motion or something, but I don't know why it's called voice, and I don't know. Doesn't matter. Voice coil motor. So maybe it's just wider, faster. I don't know. It also selling for $1,500 American. I think it's like $2,000 here, just over. Here's my secondary question for you. This is the second 35 millimeter in the RF system. They have released a 35. It was like one of their original ones almost. RF 35 1.8. So you get 1.4 to 1.8. So what is that, even a third difference? I think it's 1/3 difference.
No, that'll be, I think it'll be more.
Whatever it is.
Because 1.2 to 2.0 is the thing.
Yeah. Sells for $550 American or $500 American. I think it's like $650 Canadian. In your experience with these cheaper Canon lenses, is it worth buying the more expensive one?
That's a tricky one to answer, because have you read my manifesto on lens buying theory?
Can we send a link to the manifesto later?
Yeah. My manifesto clearly states to always buy the better lens, but get it used. So essentially, it doesn't work right now in the RF world because it hasn't been around long enough.
Or you just wait.
So what I would want to do, so that lens is $2,000 and the other one's $600, I would want to wait till I could say to myself, okay, an extra $300 or $400 versus buying the 1.8 one new. So if it was $600, get it up to say $900 or $1,000, and buy the $2,000 lens for $1,000 used. And to me, that's your best value, because there is a difference. Have you shot with the Canon's 50-1.2, the red stripe, and then they've got their 50-1.8, and then their 2.2 or something. I don't know the exact numbers, but there's the three lenses in the series where it's like the really good one, the okay one, and then the cheap one that's $100.
Yeah. And
they all look quite good, but once you get using it, I love the 1.2 compared to the 1.8.
Here's in my experience, actually, in using that scenario you just used, because we used to use that super cheap $150 one at our office, and where it really struggled on our RP camera was focusing. Like it could not handle certain focus things for whatever reason. I don't know if it wasn't enough light. I don't know if it just, I don't know what it was, or because it was just cheap. Maybe the focus didn't quite work as well with the camera as it should have, or whatever. Then you switch to like the native RF for it, and going to like what, it didn't matter what lens. Actually, we use another EF lens with it as well, a wider one, but like both of them don't have problems, but that one always had issues with focus. But when you nailed it, it looked great.
Yeah.
So,
and I doubt that Canon's RF 1.8 lens would have the same problems that cheap $150 Canon 50 would.
Yeah, I feel at $650, you're probably still nailing focus and stuff. It's just a lot cheaper and doesn't have, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure that the more expensive one will look slightly better, slightly sharper, will have a nicer fade out in the focus, things like that, right? But I'm almost kind of feeling like if a guy tried it out, he'd almost end up picking the other lens. And this goes across their line. They have a 16, a 24, a 35, a 50, and an 85, all in the cheaper versions.
That seems to me like it must be, I'm not sure. Sony must have a similar lineup of lenses for them to be doing that, because that seems like a forced competition move on their part. Otherwise, they would just go with to make the better one later. I'm trying to work that out in my head. No, it makes sense what they did, because they send out the affordable
get people
one.
in using the system.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to buy the 50-50, right?
Yeah. And then put out the expensive one after. Yeah, that makes sense.
Here's another side question based on this. It's something I personally have been looking at a lot lately. So I want to shrink my camera system for travel. So this summer I'm going to Nova Scotia. I'm going to take what I have currently, which is fine, but I want to shrink it for travel. So the next time I go to Nova Scotia or BC or wherever I go, I just want a small system. What do you think I'm better off doing? A one and done kind of lens, like a 24 to 105 or 24 to 70? Or do I maybe consider smaller, lighter? Maybe do all the F4s, the 14 to 35 and the 70 to 200 F4? Or do I do something like these cheaper primes and, do the 16, do the 35, and do the 85?
Now, okay. Are you flying or driving?
What's worse in your mind? I would say flying, because that means like you want to limit your weight, you want to limit things, size, all that stuff.
Yeah. So, boy, you know what I would do in that situation is I would go on and check the sharpness, like DP Review or something like that, where they'll actually go and check the lens sharpness for each lens and see what the difference is.
Do you know what? I want to ask this in a different way for you. You just went on a big trip. You were gone for, how long were you gone for? A month, 2 months?
Yeah. Or we were talking about the New Zealand one?
Yeah. What lens did you use most time?
My iPhone.
When you use your camera, what lens? Or did you not use?
So I only brought my iPhone.
Oh, wow.
On the trip because of luggage. I just didn't even bring it.
There you
go. If I was going there to shoot, though, so let's say that if I was going there on a shoot. Now, I'm assuming you're doing stills, right?
Yeah.
Is this a stills focused vacation?
Well, I mean, like for me, for the most part, they all would be, right? Like, and I would do some landscape stuff or like cityscape, and then probably like, portraits, whoever I'm with or whatever, right? Like a lot of it's going to be like just family photo kind of crap, right?
Yeah. So whenever I'm setting up a shot, there's very few times where I've been satisfied with a zoom unless it's an actual cinema level zoom. So for me, I would be really looking into those primes and seeing what you can make work with that.
And after Leroy and Leroy, you weren't like super jazzed about the 24 to 105?
Well, so for that purpose, it worked because it gave me the zoom, and I liked having that zoom where I could kind of zoom in on weird crap that he was talking about, then zoom back and zoom in. But so here's an example. When we were filming, we did a poutine, I think it was Smoke's Poutineery, and we did a Dairy Queen spot and stuff. When I would get a insert shot of the food, guess what lens I would use? A prime. I would go back to either my 85 or my 100 macro,
which
or
is what
something.
you should do, which is why I guessed the opposite of that, but because I thought it was going to actually surprise me.
Yeah. No, I'm just saying that, yeah, I used that lens for the stuff, but as soon as I went back to corporate style commercial shots where they didn't explicitly ask for the shots, but because I could do them, I gave them those shots, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went back to the primes, and it was, I could have got the shots on the zoom, but it wouldn't have looked the same, that's for sure.
Yeah. I also think the primes give someone a little bit more flexibility. Now, when I say that, just for an example, the RF16 2.8, if I wanted to say all of a sudden be like, I'm out on a vacation somewhere and I'm like, man, I think I could see the Milky Way, I could maybe actually hit that shot on vacation, which is kind of mind-boggling. Yeah. Whereas with the 24 to 105, I can't. I don't have a chance at that.
Yes. Now the 24, yeah. So I remember, and maybe this is my bias, because when I first got my DSLR years and years and years ago, I wanted to get a zoom that could cover every range. So I bought, I think it was a 18 to 200 or something nuts like that.
Yeah.
And I thought I was just king of the world with this lens. And then I'd get back to the computer and it was just, my photos just didn't look good, right? But then as soon as I started buying primes, it was just like, that's what I was missing. I was missing the depth of field. I was missing the sharpness. I was missing that look that they give you.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to move on to a few things here, Nick. A couple quick hitters. Have you been watching the show Baby Reindeer at all? Have you seen it? Heard of it?
No, never seen it.
There's a $170 million lawsuit happening because of it right now.
Whoa.
So anyways, it's a show about this guy who was stalked by a lady. Actually, the actor in it is the guy who's the story is about. The lady, and it's based off a true story, or based loosely, I don't know what to call it. And the lady who was the stalker is essentially suing the show, saying there's quite a few errors, lies in that. So yeah.
I wasn't stalking in my 2-door sedan. It was a 4-door.
Yeah, right. So
it's a minivan.
It's a little interesting movie news thing I found that I thought I'd share. Another one, the box office. This I don't. Is this the summer blockbusters? Are we in this now?
I think it's getting there.
Yeah, I don't know if you've heard this too, but Furiosa, so the continuation of Mad Max, or I should say the pre-continuation of Mad Max.
Yeah.
Anyways, that one came out. Garfield came out in the same weekend, Memorial Day, in the U.S. Both of them sounds like they flopped. I don't know if they've really recovered. Yeah. And then Bad Boys came out this.
Did you want to see any of those? I didn't. Bad Boys, I'm intrigued because of Will Smith right now. I kind of want to go see it.
That's what I was going to ask too. Furiosa, I like the Mad Max series. I think it's worth watching, but yeah, I wasn't going to go to the theater to see it. Bad Boys came out this last weekend. It's actually had some success. It's actually the biggest one so far. So people are kind of pumped about that. The return of Will Smith. I think this is the first movie he's done since. If this takes off, is he uncanceled?
Oh, yeah. I don't know. I always liked Will Smith. And I don't know. Can't somebody have a bad day?
No, Nick, you're not allowed any bad days. Yeah, frankly, Bad Boys is one of my all-time favorite movies, one of my all-time favorite series. I was slightly disappointed in the last version, episode 3, version 3. I don't know what the hell.
I hate rerun. I hate everything about the remake stuff, but I'm still intrigued about Will Smith. I don't know.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Like, people are going to hate me for this, but like, I like Michael Bay. I think what he does, he is extremely good at what he does.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes these movies entertaining because some people would argue against that. But again, that third one, he didn't actually do. And I think that was sort of its biggest thing, but he came back for this fourth one. So I assume it's still him. I mean, last I knew he came back, I was reading this when the third one came out. So anyways, I was excited just to have Michael Bay back and doing a fourth one.
Yeah.
So I was pumped even before the slap and everything. But yeah, so I'm just excited. I don't really care if Will Smith's canceled or not. Well,
yeah,
I'll see what happens, but we'll see. I think this might be a bad year for movies.
Well, I'll have to get Dustin on some point in time. Yeah. See if it's a bad year.
Well, we're talking about movies. Do you know why popcorn is sold at the movie theaters and why it became so popular, Nick?
Do you want me to take a guess?
Yeah, I take a wild guess.
So my wild guess would be it was sold to sell more soda. Okay. So they would add a bunch of salt and they try to get you thirsty so you'd buy more soda. That's my guess. I bet you it was probably free when they first got it into theaters.
Next to free. So basically, popcorn was a hindrance at first. It made theaters dirty and all this stuff. They hated it. But then I believe it was during, the Depression here. So it says here the Depression. When they were selling it at 10 cents a bag, it was an affordable luxury. So people would go out to the movies and it would be the one thing that they could afford. And then plus the smell and all that gets people going for it.
Yeah.
So it sort of continued on from there. Actually, I should have sent it to myself too. There was a theater somewhere in the US when COVID hit who also got by because they were selling popcorn. So they couldn't have people in the theater. So they sat out on the street and sold popcorn to people. That's how they employed their staff. So that had happened through COVID as well. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah, the history of popcorn in movies, it's maybe not the most interesting thing. Basically, it was cheap, but yeah, and both through the Depression and through COVID, there was rises in this movie theater popcorn.
I love it.
Yeah. Another quick hit here. Top 100 albums from Apple was released. Is there an album on here that you're looking for, Nick, in particular? Anything you would guess?
No.
97 Rage Against the Machine, their original one. Definitely agreed with that. Well, I thought it should have been a lot higher up. I'm going to go all the way to number one. Any guess, Nick?
Number one of all time?
Yep.
I have no idea.
So number one, Nick, Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. Do you remember that album? Everything is Everything was on it.
I have no idea what that album is.
Yeah, it's the only song I really know. I don't know much of the history about it, but whatever. It was number one. It beat out things like number 2 was Michael Jackson's Thriller. Number 3 was Beatles' Abbey Road. Number 4 was Prince's Purple Rain. And I have a hard time seeing how that album beat out those 3, but it did. Nirvana.
So how did they
Nevermind
do this?
That's a great question. I don't know. Apple's top 100. You know what? Go check it out for yourself. Another quick hitter here. Siri, iOS 18 is coming.
Yes.
Is it already out? Should I have downloaded it?
No, I don't think it is yet.
So I came across this one article for it, Nick. It was everything that you could do. Long lists of stuff, what apps are getting enhanced, and kind of, I was looking at it just for me to know. And then I came across something that was interesting. So the first one was Siri improvements in camera. How would Siri improve the camera on your iPhone?
Ooh. How would Siri? I have no idea.
Yeah, basically it doesn't. That was the conclusion I came to. But with the camera app, you can toggle video recording, I guess, with Siri. Hey, Siri, go to photo. Maybe I'm thinking, I don't know, open the camera to specific mode, like, hey, Siri, open slow motion, maybe.
So do you know why Siri sucks? So when you ask Siri a question, it says, please look it up on your phone. But if you ask Google a question, it answers it. Do you know why that is?
No.
So I read an article on it because in the new update, they're updating Siri so that it doesn't suck, because Apple knows it sucks.
They're making the update so it doesn't suck.
But so why it sucks so bad is that apparently they have to, Apple, it has something to do with the processor. So when you ask your HomePod or Siri, it's limited to how fast your processor on your phone can access that information. But when Google does it, it sends all of the information up to the cloud, and it uses cloud computing, and it can get your answer very quick and then send you the answer. But it has to do with Apple's privacy, because they don't want that information to leave it wants to process that question on your device, so it's not sending the audio straight to the cloud, apparently. It is interesting.
The more you know.
Yeah.
What I found interesting about this, again, I thought it was kind of like, okay, well, whatever. But then I was like, oh, like, so, okay, they're already applying AI things like to editing. They're going to apply this AI to Siri. You know, what's coming in the future with your camera and the phone? Like, and like this sort of like got my mind like, whoa, we're really at, like, they're really pushing some abilities here. And I think we're maybe not like now, but down the road, we're going to see some pretty incredible things done with AI, done with Siri through iPhone, which could be pretty neat.
Interesting. You know what I want? I want to get like 10 stacked focus, where it can somehow take an image, not AI focus or whatever, but it could take focus here, 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 and I can decide on my computer after, similar to how I can with RAW.
100% where I was going next. So keep scrolling down. Eventually I get to Siri improvement in photos. And I'm like, oh, they're going to do more in apps. So not just photos, probably all the apps I use. I use something called Be Funky on mine. And I've seen them add AI stuff into that. And I keep wondering, and it never dawned on me, like, oh, these things are going to update. The usage in photos is actually kind of interesting. A lot of it seems to me like it'll work from your phone to your machine and how it does. So it's simple things, right? Searching. So how it searches on your phone, how it searches on your machine, rotating photos, renaming albums. Opening
auto-rotating and renaming stuff.
Yeah. Opening photos of specific people. Hey, Siri, show me photos of Nick.
Whoa.
Boom. Those sort of things. So there's a whole list of things here. They actually all sound kind of interesting and kind of capable.
Yeah. Hey, Siri, show us the photos of our trip to Nova Scotia. Yeah, I don't mind that.
So like it does seem like these things are actually going to be kind of neat.
Yeah, show us the 10 best photos that we've had from Nova Scotia. Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
The 10 best photos from 2014 or whatever. Yeah.
Man. This is going to be funny. I'm going to show you one last thing here, Nick. It is called bookshelf.so. I know you can't see it, but just imagine this, if you will. Right now, it's like a black screen, and on that screen at the top, there's a bunch of like books, like the sides of a book.
Okay, yeah, I brought it up here.
Like this, sitting like this on there.
Yeah.
See if that focuses so you can see my book about tequila. And then you can click on that book. And when you click on it, it opens it up. And then there's like a little written part about that book. So the book I've got opened up on screen is The Creative Act, The Way of Being by Rick Rubin. Yes, the recording artist, Rick Rubin. And then my little notes on it. We do a book club at work. So we're reading a book right now, Leaders Eat Last by Simon Sinek. So my notes on that.
You're still reading that book? Is this a yearly book club?
I'm a slow reader. This is why I went into video.
We meet bi-yearly. Every second year we meet in our book club.
This is why I went into video, Nick, was so I didn't have to read. Anyways, I think it's a neat little thing, and I'm going to start. I actually have this entire book is filled of notes of books I've read, and I think I'm going to digitize them here. I think it'll be kind of...
I like the sound of that. And yeah, we should maybe talk off air, but I'm thinking we should incorporate a book club chapter into our podcast.
I like it.
Because have I told you I'm committed? I'm reading a book a week this year.
Oh wow, that is a lot. Where are you finding time?
Well, so this is how you break it down. A book a week is essentially either an hour a night. You know, if it's a 300-page book, it's an hour a night, or an hour of listening to. So I'll have to cut out some podcast time, and listen to an hour of a book versus an hour.
It takes a lot, man. I listen to books on the way to work and back, so which is about almost an hour of commute every day. So the current book I'm listening to, I can even give you the name of it, but it's 12 hours long total, and I'm 1 hour into it. But it's the Heaven and Earth grocery store. It's on the Libby from the library.
That's a big book. That must be what, a 500-page book? If it was, I
feel like the 10-hour mark's kind of average, 7 to 10.
So, and maybe I'll run into problems with it, but the Stories That Stick was 8 hours. Best Story Wins was 5 hours. And right now I'm working on the 12-week year, which is an interesting concept where it's breaking the year down into, it's breaking the yearly goals into 4 years, or like it's putting 4 years into 1 year. And yeah, but anyway, so Stories That Stick was only 8 hours.
Too early to ask you what your goals are?
Yeah, so I'm only on the first chapter in that one. But the Stories That Stick.
So right now your goal is to get through the book.
Yeah, my goal is to get through the book before the end of the year.
Yeah.
No, but so that video, Mr. Beast's philanthropy guy, Dan Mace, in that video, in the 3-hour video that he did about making videos, he mentioned how he reads a book a week. And he made the argument that if he's saying you don't have time to do that, you're wrong, because we all have an extra. He broke it down to basically an hour a day that you could carve out, and what can you cut out of your day to give yourself an extra hour? And mine is podcasts.
So, well, this is where, like, I feel like the point of it's not to cut out something, right? Like budgeting. I don't think you cut out things. Like, and here's the thing. I would put it like, find the time. And I'm going to use a really terrible example, but I'm going to use it. I read my book while I'm taking a poop.
Okay.
Because that's the time you get sometimes, right? Like why be quiet? At least I'm not taking my phone in there like some other psychopaths. Well, yeah. Anyways, if you don't make time, you don't got time, or if something like that.
I like your way of looking at it. It's a more optimistic way of looking at it, and it's good.
It's the Yoda do or do not.
Yeah, but I haven't been reading enough books lately, and I am not afraid of committing to a big goal. So, yeah, book a week, see what happens.
I wish luck. I actually can't wait to hear updates on this.
Yeah. Well, it's still on number 2. If the last half of the year, if I do a book a day.
Nick, this other topic I want to ask you about, getting super personal.
Yeah.
The capital gains tax changes. How'd that affect you?
So we sold before it took effect on our property. So we'll see how that works. I gotta actually have to get advice to see if us selling it before the change works or if it's too bad, so sad because it takes effect on the end of the year. So I need to figure that out. So I don't know is the right answer.
Okay. Well, but I mean, at least you hit the before the one, so it shouldn't be as bad as what it could be.
Yeah, so it's sold before it took effect, but I could very well see the fine print saying too bad, so sad it was in that tax year. Yes, it took effect this day, but it applies for the whole year. I could see that happening too. So we'll see.
Is it something you're worried about?
No, I try not to worry about that much anymore. There's will it make a difference? Yeah. So there's taxes always make a difference. So is the government going to use the money wisely? Probably not. So is that a problem? Yeah. I don't know. Can I change it? Probably not. I don't know. I hate getting into stuff too political. So
I've ridden out some roller coaster with this thing. So my initial reaction was like, what the, why? Like, and then it was like, okay, well, it doesn't apply to me. Then I was like,
that's how we all see every single government policy.
I was like,
it's not on its merits of good or bad. Yeah. We'll only justify the merits if it applies to us. Then there'll be a moral reason why.
Like, I knew capital tax gains was something that could affect me angry. Then I was like,
yeah,
I'm not rich enough to make that, so it doesn't affect me. And then
I have no capital or gains.
Yeah.
So
and then
I'm not concerned.
Then it was like, what is my capital? Oh, well, it's my condo. And then back up. And I'm like, okay, well, what starts happening like when I sell this? Like, does this screw me over when I sell it? And so I start crunching some numbers, trying to figure it out myself. And then I emailed, we have access to a person at work for task financial questions like this. And so I asked him a bunch of questions. He broke down some more numbers for me. And, sort of going through that range, should I buy or should I sell now? Should I keep it? What should I do? And I thought he gave me some really good advice for this. One, he brought me back down saying like, yeah, your condo is, what's your condo worth? And I'm like, 130,000. And he's like, yeah, you don't have to worry.
Now, but your primary residence is always exempt. Oh, but you're talking if you turn it into a rental.
Right.
And then, so I see where you're going with this.
Right. So then I was wondering, like, if I turn it into a rental now, like, does it start at the valuation now? So I'm giving away too much information here, but I paid like $190 for this place.
Yeah.
But it's only worth $130 now because it's dropped. So could I get like a capital gains break from that starting point? And then he was like, no, it starts from when you start into a rental and yada, yada.
Because it would be valued at 130 because that would be the market when you turn it into a rental. I'm pretty sure that's the way it works. Yeah.
100%. So then I started asking, like, just, when I go to sell this thing, like, what should I do? Should I just sell it, take the money, run? Should I rent it? What would I do? And the thing he sort of mentioned that sort of blew my mind, that was so like mindlessly simple. I don't have any money really tucked away into my tax-free savings account.
Mm-hmm.
So I have all that room. So like if you're starting from the start, I think you have $96,000 you can put into it.
Mm-hmm.
So I could sell my condo and dump
Mm-hmm.
pretty much all of it into the TFSA.
Yeah. And have it invested too, because you don't have to have it you can actually invest in like mutual funds or ETFs or whatever. So you don't have to be just collecting your regular interest rate.
So yeah, that one little comment, it just all of a sudden everything seemed to make a lot more sense for me. And
plus it's a whole lot easier than managing a rental.
Yeah. So anyways, then I was all good with capital gains tax again.
Then you were good again.
Yeah. And then I was back on, I was like, oh, this affects Nick though. Like he's selling all this stuff. I should actually ask him this question.
So it'll affect, I've got another place to sell, and it will actually not affect that one because that place will be capital loss, because we had an appraisal done on the place when we moved out. So we've got the value of it before we turned it into a rental, and it will be sold for less than that value, because it was, when we turned it into a rental, it was the exact opposite situation that you're in. It was a pretty hot real estate market, although right now I would be curious. My instinct would tell me that your place is worth more than 130 because it's been a good summer for real estate.
Yeah, maybe this year. I honestly, I don't know. I haven't looked. Oh, wow.
My guess, this is just the back of the napkin guess, but I bet it's gone up 30 grand.
No, not that much. Maybe 10.
It's the market's heating up. How many bedrooms?
2.
Maybe not enough bedrooms. If you had a third bedroom, it would be heating up.
I'm going on to realtor.ca.
Because part of the issue is rents. Rents have been
yeah, that's true too.
Going sky high, and it's really difficult to rent the place. So people that would be normally renting and happy renting are almost getting forced into the ownership side of things. So if you consider 130, turn that into rent. So if you were just trying to rent a place in the city right now, to rent your place would be what, 1,500?
Yeah. I'm actually looking at 134.9. Don't know how close this is to mine. It's got some nicer stuff in it than mine too, but it's also got a lot of
134?
134 net.
Something's wrong with there's an inconsistency in the market. What's your fees on it? Your condo fees?
I don't remember what I'm paying, 2 something, I think.
2 something?
Yeah.
It's so cheap. Why would you rent? Why would you just not buy a place like yours?
Yeah. There's
for that price
here. 144 is the highest one. Let's have a look at that one. And this one's all like sort of redone on the inside. Well,
that makes like zero sense. Redone.
They kind of polished a pig here. They got painted cupboards. I could do that. I mean, they just don't have a place as pretty as mine.
But do you know what I mean? Why would you bother renting? Why would you not just buy a place like yours for that price, and you would be barely maintenance free? Like, how much have you spent on maintenance in your house, in your condo?
Wow. I did have to replace the front window. It cracked. I should be replacing all the other windows back here. You can see like the old 70s wood panel for cupboards and the 70 wood doors, stuff. Like, it's all cosmetic stuff. And I got way too much crap hanging on the walls, and I did dumb things.
None of that sounds like it's costing money. So I think my answer for how much you spent is like $1,000 in maintenance in 10 years.
Yeah, it's not a whole pot. No, but the big window was expensive. It was like $3 or $4 grand.
Okay.
But yeah, like other than that, though, that was it.
When did that break?
Years ago.
A couple years ago. Okay.
I think just before COVID.
Okay. Never mind.
So
I was.
Yeah. Anyways, one last question for you, Nick. One last subject. I suppose it's kind of a two-way street here. I think we've kind of touched on this a bit before, but first time you ever used a video camera, what was that like for you?
Oh yeah. So first time I ever used a video camera, I would have been, let's say 11 years old, 10 or 11. And my grandpa had, those big shoulder mount, it'd sit on the back of your shoulder, put your palm in it there. And it was a VHS. So it recorded straight to VHS, which was amazing because you could record it, take it right to your VHS player and watch it instantly on the TV. And he'd owned this thing for a while because he'd been recording little like hockey games and stuff when I was a little kid on it. And so when I turned 10 or 11, because it was super expensive when he bought it, but it had been long enough that a little kid could ask his grandpa to borrow the camera and he'd say yes. And it was amazing. I'd borrowed it from him for like all the time. I was always trying to borrow it from him. And yeah, that thing was amazing. I knew nothing about exposure or focus or any of that stuff. I just would switch it to the auto mode and hit record and make my little movies. But yeah, my goodness.
You were actually making like little movies too, like little stories?
Oh yeah, we were making movies all the time.
Like your own stories?
Yeah, we were writing our own stories, and they would basically... so me and my sister would do it.
Barocco for a minute.
No, and me and this guy down the street, he loved action movies. So this kid down the street, he was into action movies big time, like big time into action movies. And I liked action movies too. Well, I still like action movies, but pretty much all of our movies would end in somebody getting shot with a dart gun. It was a lot of guns in the movies at the time. Do you remember that in the 90s? Guns were very popular in movies.
Die Hard.
Yeah. So it was great. How about yours? What was your first video camera?
Yeah, it was kind of funny. I feel like we did it for a school project, and I don't remember the gist of it, or at least this is the first time I remember working with video cameras. We actually did like film in school in that as well, and that was sort of, I had some like film stuff at home or whatever, the old McDonald's camera we've talked about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so anyways, there's this film project. I believe it was on the Canterbury Tales. Have you ever heard of that book?
This is some artsy people in Lanigan making Canterbury Tales videos.
Yeah, right. Like, so we there's this set of stories about one of the characters in Canterbury Tales. I think it's about like 27 different people or something. And the one guy always seemed to get himself into trouble. He was sort of the degenerate, the local bad boy of town, drinking booze, sleeping with women and stuff. And, as teenage kids, we thought that was,
Ryan,
it's cool.
It was not full of budding artists.
It was as cool as it could get for, a school book, right? So we decided, I think my buddy Scott, his parents had the camera, and I was like, I think it randomly came up, you could make a video, and Scott was like, well, my parents have a camera. I was like, yeah, let's do it, right? Like, let's
recreate these things. Camera. Wow.
So we're like, we go out to my other buddy's farm, and we do all these like weird stories that cut together, and we had to we cut things together using, it was like a DV camera too.
Yeah.
So it was even after VHS, so we would plug it into the VHS machine, record it, and then record it back out to the to cut scenes together and stuff too.
Oh, that's way fancier. We were just recording in camera. You got one crack at the scene. If you screwed it up, you'd have to start the whole movie over.
We still had to hit a single scene, right? But it was just to meld scenes together. It was just the way that we could do it.
Oh no, our melding was in camera. Like, we had action, hit record,
the big
and then
ending.
cut. You only got one track at the scene. You'd have to rehearse before you did the scene.
Yeah, part of our other problem was like that the big ending scene happened at night. So we had a night scene. So we drive out to my buddy's farm. We actually did the night scene first, and then we had to go back and do the day.
Oh, you guys were so much more advanced. We couldn't figure out 2 VHS machines, and wow.
Yeah. So the big highlight of the show was the night scene. So this guy, he's stealing gasoline, I think it was, from somewhere. At least that's how our scene turned out, was our modern day version of stealing gas. And the first thing that we thought was super hilarious was my buddy had the Scream mask, the white face.
Yeah.
And so like that's how he goes in to steal the gas. There's camera set up on this gas tank, and the Scream guy comes in and he does this stupid little move. It was great. We laughed hysterically.
Can I guess what you did? Probably the same mistake that we did, where we'd have to, there was a lot of opening doors because we couldn't figure out that somebody would already be in the scene. They'd have to come from a door into the scene and then leave the scene. We couldn't just cut into the action. Did you make that mistake?
I want to say no. And now this is a product of what it was, because most of it was outside.
Okay.
So anyways, the big scene was this explosion. So, and in how the story goes, whatever happens, this guy lights this fire and there's this big explosion. And I think that's how he dies in the Canterbury Tales. So we have an explosion. We're like, well, how are we going to do an explosion? And we're like, well, we're going to do this VCR thing. So why can't we just take an explosion from a movie?
You guys were so much smarter than who? What? Well, my neighbor Cody. Yeah, me and my neighbor Cody.
So then
making these movies.
Then we started cutting back and forth. So we had my buddy do his little thing, and then we cut in like an explosion from like Die Hard, boom, and then we cut back to my buddy rolling on the ground outside. So there was like no cohesion to it.
Wow.
And screaming. And then we cut back to a few more explosions, and then we even threw in like a hit from Don Cherry's, just because we're hockey nerds, and we thought that was pretty funny, like to add in for an explosion. And then we ended it with a clip from Independence Day, all the explosions going. And I don't know if you remember this, but I'm actually played it. The guy goes, "Oh crap! Oh crap!" Greatest video of all time. And we laughed hysterically at it.
Do you still have that?
Do you know what? I should ask my buddy Tyler. I bet he's got it somewhere.
That's hilarious. Yeah. Oh, that's good.
Yeah. So that's the story of my first video experience, and then I didn't touch it again until film school.
Are you serious? Okay. Yeah, I was obsessed with that camera. And then, oddly enough, in high school, kind of forgot about it. But then, my first year of college, this is how kind of dumb I was. Sweet, I've got $2,000 in my bank account. You know what I'm going to do? Pawn shop, bought a video camera.
No, I wasn't willing to go that far with it.
And then just recorded stuff on that video camera constantly. And that was when I didn't learn the 2 editing system till college. Even then I did a lot of in-camera edits for the stuff.
Yeah. I got more into like home theater equipment and like fancy audio things. Like if you probably won't be able to see that, but it's like a fancy brand of audio stuff. These earplugs do some weird spatial thing. It's whatever. I got into stuff like that as opposed to buying video equipment. I was more into watching movies at that time.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Nick, let's wrap it up. Do you have any?
Yeah, we should.
You want to say anything you want to close with?
Wish me luck on reading these books.
By Nick Lamb.
You need to give me some, because you've read a lot more. You read a lot.
What are you interested in?
So I'm going through right now my first 10 books or so. Well, although I've been straying away basically by going with what's available on Hoopla. But I want to read through Dan Mace's recommended books. He's got about 10 books or so. And I want to read through those because they apply to what I do. He basically does what I do, only better.
There we go. I think that's how we're going to end it. Do what Nick does, only better. Have a good night, everybody. We'll see you all on the next episode. I'm not going to put a lot of effort into it, but I might just do it.
Sounds good.
Okay, I'm going to take one half and cut it to the other half, and then put music at the end and start.
That sounds awesome. You don't want to hear me complain about having to edit another podcast?
No, I don't want to.
That wasted too much time off my life.